Oh, cool. I know those guys. Hello. So, first a question. Who here is a developer making games? Hands up. Oh, cool. All right. Who here is a developer who is making idle games? Hands up. Oh, just a few. Okay. Who here hates it when speakers start like this? Terrible, terrible way. Yeah, there we go. Terrible way to do this. All right, but I have one more. Who here can explain to me what an idle game is? And before you do, I have an awesome prize. This is the only thing I could get through customs from Berlin. It's filled with pens, which we all love and adore, and you might also find in your bags. So, any takers? Any takers for this awesome prize? What is an idle game? Yes. No gameplay. Yes? UI buttons. UI buttons, yes. I would describe it as a spreadsheet with an interface, which is pretty close, but they're fun. They're a fun spreadsheet. So, oh yeah, you get your prize, right? Okay, here you go. Here's your prize. Thank you. Thank you very much for participating. Yeah, you get some pens. Spread them around. There are pens everywhere. Okay, that's the last one of those I'll do, I promise. All right. So what did we learn building our idle games? In this, I want to go through more of the elements of what makes an idle game work, since it sounds like there's a bunch of folks who have never made an idle game and maybe don't really understand all of the components yet. But you will by the end of this, I promise. This is me. I look like that. We'll keep going. There's a bunch of slides. I put too many, so we have to go fast. So we're going to talk about our story, how we got here. A little bit about our game, Idle Miner Tycoon, which is the first idle title that we released, not the first game that we worked on. And our development approach, as well as what we think about this fancy games as a service thing. Okay, so we'll start with our story, because it looks like that's first. All right. So we're going to talk about how we built the game, our company, Kolibri Games, which was originally Fluffy Fairy Games, into a gaming franchise with over 100 million installs. Yep, there we go. All right, so this is our first office. It's a student apartment. I've slept on that floor. It's very comfortable. And a little town near Frankfurt called Karlsruhe. So we started developing our games there. And our first project was a game called Front Yard Wars. Has anyone heard of it? No, of course, because we never released it. We got about 60% of the way through this and realized that we had no idea what we were doing. We were just students, and we killed this. And this is lesson number one. And then I'm going to punctuate this with some key lessons that I think are important. And this is the first one. Don't get in way over your heads on a project that you have no idea what you're doing. And this is a key example. Front Yard Wars. Rest in peace. So we killed that project, and then we started on an idle game. And we thought, okay, idle games, relatively easy. There's this Congregate put out a bunch of math for it. There's already a Google sheet. It should be pretty easy to do. We'll just copy that. It'll be fine. And so we dove in. And then we kind of came up with this idea for what we wanted our prototype to be. And it was really important, firstly, that we not do an idle game like a lot of people who had already produced idle games. So most people, when they were making idle games, wanted an idle game where you had a business, right? So usually with idle games, you're accruing revenue or some sort of points when you're not playing. And it's easy to conceptualize this as a business. Even easier, given the form factor of the phones, to make it a tower, and the tower grows, and I build more floors on my tower. But we decided we were going to be smart and go the opposite way. And if you're digging down, you're either, I don't know, going to hell or you're making a mine. And so we went with a mine because it was family friendly. So here are the core features in there, right? So there's no 3D work, there's no social, there's no loca, everything is in English, there's no cloud save, etc. And this was our prototype. And it worked actually pretty well. So for us, we started out with a day one retention of about 65 up to 75%, which was pretty good, I think. and we kind of grew it from there. So we started adding our games as a service. We released Idle Factory Tycoon #2, and developed our process. And we'll go more into the process in a second. It's coming. This is the prelude. Okay, things started growing. This is a lot of love from platforms that we see that's kind of making us spike, and eventually we figure out how to do marketing. And I do want to answer your marketing question in the back in a second about how many users. So eventually we moved to Berlin. This is Berlin, and grew our portfolio. But I want to keep going because I'm in the back. Do you see me? Nope, too late. Because we don't have that much time. So let's talk first about Idle Miner Tycoon and what makes it an idle game. Because this is a question we had that I posed, so I'm cheating when I ask that. So there are a ton of different idle games, and I think that's really important. There are different ways to approach this. There are different styles. There's different IP you can work with. So for instance, this is our grandfather, right, who kind of spawned a bunch of these things, and this is your traditional business simulator idle game, which is a valid route to take, absolutely. This is Tap Titans 2. This is an RPG idle game. Okay, so we can experiment a little bit. This one is great. It's by Eastside Games. This is an idle game. It's a business simulator, but it's based on this really specific Canadian IP called Trailer Park Boys. If you don't know it, it's okay. If you do, they have a significantly lower DAU count, so they don't have to do as much marketing. But the users that they have love this game so much, and they spend like 20 times what our users do. So these are routes too. The upper right is an idle coloring game. I mean, it just keeps going, right? A bunch of different idle games. All right, so in our idle game, the very first thing you do is you mine resources. So in the beginning, it was very simple. You mined coal, and then gold, and then diamonds and silver. Eventually you run out of minerals because who knows what bauxite looks like? I don't. So we tried other things like candy. You can explore your world, find the new mines, go on things like expeditions. This is our first foray into social features. Expeditions, or expand your skill tree. We added this on a year and a half later, and this is where the metagame begins to take off. All right, expand your skills, get all the power-ups. This can come later. So as I mentioned, nobody wants to mine bauxite, so we thought we'd get really clever, and we started adding all these other strange mines. So you can mine things like ninjas, I guess it's sushi. You can mine things like the ocean, so that's pearls, and aliens, and these are alien blobs. We got a little creative, but users love this stuff. So we would launch one of these events in a weekend, and we would see our revenue double, which was a pretty good direction for revenue to go, and I recommend. Then we added, we like borrowing ideas. So we also took this season pass thing that we saw was working really, really well from Clash of Clans and some game called Fortnite, and we're like, all right, we're gonna do this in our game, and it also worked really well. It's now, I think, our second or third best-selling in-app purchase are these unlocks of the premium pass. I'm not sure if everyone understands how a season works, so I'll explain it briefly. So you participate in the event mines, mining candy canes or whatever for Halloween, you're participating in the event mines through the course of a month. So on October 1st, we launch one event mine, and we periodically launch them throughout the month. And you get some rewards if you complete without paying, but you get a whole lot more rewards if you complete and you pay. So if you get to level 30 in our candy cane mine, and you've paid, you're like the king until the next season. And this is huge for our revenue. Okay, and within these mines, or with an idle miner, I think it's really important to kind of look at like what the audience is, right? So it's a little bit casual, hyper casual. It's easy to pick up and play. There are idle, hyper casual games. Ours is not. Obviously, there's idle because That's the definition. And there's some mid-core elements, these strong social mechanics and metagame. But, and I think this is like the second pin I'm going to put in this. This is probably the most important thing about the game and what makes it work. So within this, whenever somebody is playing, everything that is happening within the idle game is right there, and it's right there and visible, right? So I am mining, okay? I have my mines. The miners move materials to the transporters. The transporters then move that over to the warehouse, and we sell that. With our money that we've used to sell that, then we upgrade everything else. And this creates within it 3 choke points, for lack of a better term. Okay, these are the things that will prevent you, that will gate your ability to progress in the idle game. And they are all visible in one screen. Because we make games, we don't make games that are like, you know, for hardcore players who, you know, want to like level up over the course of like 3 years and have clans and, you know, this big thing. No, these are people who want to play a game on the subway on their way home and not have to deal with all of this nonsense. Okay, it's all right there. They download the game, they play the game, they can watch ads or spend money, but it doesn't require a huge investment in order to start. That was the previous slide, right? So it's all here. And these important choke points are then how we monetize. So the user understands how it works, and then we can monetize that understanding. And we do this 2 ways, right? So they can pay or they can wait. We manipulate money and time. These are the only 2 levers that we have for our players. Cosmetics, okay, they're cool, social features are cool, but it's really just money and time. How fast do you want to do this? Because it's an idle game, you can never lose. That's also important. You cannot lose this game. You just keep progressing. Unless you make some weird variation of an idle game that you can lose, which I don't think will work. It's either you win really quickly, or you win kind of slow, but you come back in a year, and it's still the same thing. Great. This is sort of a visualization of this, right? You can either double your revenue, or you can unlock barriers. So if I want to make a new mine shaft, I have to spend some premium currency, or I can watch an ad, or I can just wait until I can produce that new mine shaft. And this is probably one of the more familiar ones for everybody. If I come back to the game, I can double my revenue by watching an ad. This is probably our biggest moneymaker when it comes to ad revenue. Cool. So outside of ads, we also monetize with in-app purchases. For us, it's a distribution of about 60% ads, 40% IAP, and this will vary over time. We didn't have in-app purchases in the beginning. We did an investment sort of like that Homa Games did, right? We invested a lot of time and attention in our community management. And our community told us they wanted a way to spend money, so we gave them IAPs to buy. Had we not been listening, I don't think we'd be here. All right, okay, so we talked about what idle games are. Any questions so far on what is an idle game? What are the variations? I will pause, take a breath. Okay, cool. So we'll talk a bit about our process. So the most important thing is to say no to everything that you want to do. Everything. Like all the cool features. If you want to make some like idle game that's like an idle game battle royale, like good luck. But start off with one of those things first. We read this book, which is pretty helpful, and sort of led us on this route. So we created this. This is an example of our second game, Idle Factory Tycoon. And we cheated a little bit because we had idle miners, so we could do Idle Factory a bit faster. But the first thing that we did is nail the basic mechanics. We sent that out to just a few people to test qualitatively. Do you like this game? It worked. Then we developed the rough graphic concepts. This goes out to a few more people outside of the development team, which is like probably about 6 people, 4 to 6 maybe, depending on the stage. And this goes to people who don't know anything about games, like me or whatever. And I play that and say if I like it, if I think it's fun. Then we start iterating on the graphics, the mechanics, and balancing, in this case with Idle Factory, by hand-picking players in our Idle Miner group on Facebook. And we ping them sort of secretively, and we're like, hey, do you want to play a cool idle game? And they're like, yeah, I totally do want to do that. And then we invite them to a group, and they're like, wow, you're the Idle Miner Tycoon people. And we're like, yes, we are. Play Idle Factory Tycoon. It's very labor-intensive but cheap UA. And they gave us a lot of feedback. And finally, we can come out with our finalized UX, graphics, mechanics, balancing, and release it to the world. We don't soft launch in any countries because what's the point? Like, we do a stress test in Malaysia to make sure that things aren't going to break, and then we just kick it out to the world. We're mostly looking at day one retention, principally because A, it is the hardest probably to fix, but B, it gives us the most wiggle room. So if we F something up later on in the game, in the meta game, and like all the other features, we have this wiggle room because of day one retention. Okay, saw this one? Yeah. And so this is a cleaner version of that process. So you can see, here's our small team. We find the core mechanic, just a couple people, 5 people. And after about 8 weeks, we released Idle Factory Tycoon, knowing what we were looking for. And now it's at the stage of forever. So we're adding team members, building features, and scaling. There are definitely challenges here, right? Because I think one issue, and I don't want to like sound like I'm crazy, right? Like Idle Miner Tycoon we're extremely fortunate in the user engagement with that one, right? It's a bit like lightning in a bottle. So with Idle Factory, we have to kind of like step back expectations, right? Here's this hit game, this is crazy. Let's make sure that if we're going to ape functions in it, that we're aping the right functions and we're setting the bar where it needs to be and not outrageously high. So even though we might not have like this sort of natural golden cohort that we can rely on very, very early on with factoring, right? Because people have kind of seen the game. There are other things we can do to keep people around. And that's the games as a service, which for us means continual updates, new events, and of course, things mentioned earlier like the deals within the game. I think one fun fact is the reason that we have so many updates is early on, well, of course, I don't know if we know what we're doing now, but we definitely didn't know what we were doing early on, and we couldn't ship content over the air. So this like crazy cool number of 160 updates is because we wanted to update every week, and we didn't have any other way to do it than to just ship updates every week. So we started doing this, and it became part of our process. And the upside of that is you get content out really, really fast. And users begin to expect updates, right? So they get really engaged. And they like this. They like that you're doing something new every week. Sometimes it's a bug fix. Other times it's like something crazy. So we've developed our update policy around this. So usually what we do in our company is that we'll have like sort of like a bit of a header for these updates. So we'll have like a designer, some artists working slightly ahead to get balancing, to get graphics uploaded to Dropbox. So then once the week starts, the engineers can grab all of those assets from Dropbox and just start working. We're also testing during this period. So it's really about 4 days of development work, maybe 3, and 2 days of bug fixing with the updates coming out on the Fridays. And for the most part, when we're doing rollout for any single one of our releases, is that we're looking for first 1% of rollout. You can do this on Google Play, and I think to some degree on Apple, is to identify any major bugs. So we can kill the project then, or the release. At that point, about around 20%, we're looking for qualitative feedbacks and store reviews. And then if we're lucky, everything goes right by day 4, we kick it out the door and it's live. Have there been issues? Yeah, definitely. My favorite one is that when we were releasing our event system first, we accidentally gave like, I don't know, like 25,000 people our development build, which was a mistake. I wouldn't repeat. So it's like, oh, this is cool. It's still out there. But for the most part, this caches all of the errors. Cool. As we're looking, though, I think one really big element of this is how we're deciding what changes to make for these weeks. So we have users all over the place, right? Okay, so this is really cool, fancy graph, and you can get all sorts of this stuff, but to some degree, like we look at things like this and we really have no idea what it means, other than, you know, like, we have graphs like this, you know, so we have cool stuff. We know we have users who are hanging out for 10 minutes in the game. We know we have users who are watching 8 ads per user session per day with 52% ad engagement. And I can tell you what our ARPDAUs are, and I can tell you things, this is a cool one. This is the popularity of our purchases for first, second, and third purchase. But we as a company have no idea what to do with this kind of cool graph. I couldn't tell you. Is that a good one? 23%? Maybe? I don't know. Just wing it, really. So for the most part, what we're looking for when it comes to our release cycle, it's entirely based on user feedback. And I think if you're a small game company, there are important things to look at, like day one retention. Okay, this is quantitative. There are important things to look at, like, you know, do we have session times that are long enough for people to watch ads? But beyond that, good luck. So we mostly rely on what is going to be fun, and we err on the side of let's add more content to keep the players happy so they stick around and they recommend the game. And that's how we make our games. So we talked a little bit about our story. We talked a little bit about Idle Miner Tycoon specifically, and what works as an idle game, keeping everything on the screen, keeping things simple, keeping those choke points. We talked about our development approach and what games as a service means, how we're adding content, a bit like this sometimes, but keeping the players happy. And we sort of wrapped it up right about there. I don't want anyone here to make idle games. I want you to make good idle games. So if you have additional questions afterwards, I'm happy to talk about them or direct you to people that know a bit more about what they're doing. Thank you very much. Do I do this?